It's time to put real estate investment back on the agenda. In the first half of this year, many Australians put their real estate plans and thoughts on hold because we had what amounted to a perfect storm of negative events creating uncertainty, particularly in the lead up to the impending federal election. But since then, since the middle of May, we've had what you might call a series of fortunate events. All the uncertainty created by the federal election is out of the way. The fear created by some of those Labor Party policies impacting on real estate is now gone. Getting finance has now become much easier and faster and cheaper, and people can borrow more than before because of the APRA changes. And we have tax cuts in the offing and generally speaking, a much happier or confident environment for people to operate in when they consider real estate. Sentiment has turned around. Real estate is back, particularly in the bigger cities. Now, there are some locations in Australia where real estate is never down. Media tends to focus pretty much exclusively in their coverage of real estate on the two biggest cities, Sydney and Melbourne, and tend to extrapolate what's happening there to the entire nation, which is inaccurate and misleading. Well, Sydney and Melbourne were going through their recent price corrections after the boom phase. Many other parts of Australia were continuing along business as usual. Hobart was still strong. Canberra market was chugging along pretty happily, as it always does. Many parts of regional Australia, including regional Tasmania, Victoria, New South Wales, and increasingly parts of regional Queensland have had rising markets. So that's all continuing, but now in a climate of greater confidence and an uplift in general public sentiment. And because of all those recent fortunate events, we're now seeing recovery in the markets in the two biggest cities. Both Sydney and Melbourne are showing increasing signs of returning to price growth. First, we saw a slowdown in the rate of decline in prices, then we saw prices bottoming out. And in the last month or so, we've seen increasing evidence that prices are starting to nudge upwards, generally speaking, in the two biggest cities. And that's been supported by anecdotal evidence of buyers out there competing strongly for good real estate, and also the statistics that come from the weekly auction clearance rates, even though that's fairly dodgy data, rubbery figures we tend to think, but taken with all the other evidence, I think it's pretty clear that recovery is underway in the Sydney and Melbourne markets. And then, as I said, we have a continuation of the strong, rising, healthy markets in some of the smaller capital cities and in many of the regional markets, particularly in the eastern states of Australia. So we think it's time for people who have been sitting on the fence or who had put their property investment plans in abeyance to get active again, to get back into the market, because all the evidence suggests that there are good markets around Australia in which to invest in a climate of competitive pricing, but markets that are on the cusp of upcycles, rising markets. Now's a pretty good time to be considering Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth. Canberra is still a good place to consider, and many parts of regional Australia. So we urge those investors who had decided to put real estate on the back burner, perhaps in the first half of this year, to consider the possibility of getting back into the market, because so much has changed. And in terms of real estate investment, it's changed very much for the better. That's it for now. Ryder from hotspotting.com.au signing off. Let's talk again soon.